Welcome back, folks. I want to talk to you real quick about President Obama's comments on the U.S. Supreme Court. President Obama used to teach constitutional law. If you're a former student of his, I would urge you to demand a refund. He obviously doesn't understand the role of the U.S. Supreme Court or the U.S. Constitution. If I was a professor at Harvard, at the Harvard Law School, who had taught Mr. Obama, I would be out in public saying, look, our students actually know that judicial review does rest in the U.S. Supreme Court, and I don't know why Mr. Obama, former law review editor at Harvard, can't figure this out. From 1803 Marbury versus Madison through today, the U.S. Supreme Court has overturned about 165, 164. There's a couple that you can argue about whether it's one case or two cases. But rough number, 165, 164 cases from 1803 to today. Basically about every 16, 17 months, the U.S. Supreme Court overturns a federal law. It is the job of the U.S. Supreme Court. Go to the Constitution. When in doubt, you can go ahead and read the U.S. Constitution. When you go into the Constitution, guess what? It says clearly what the duties of the U.S. Supreme Court are. And when I flipped to Article 3, the judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court and in such inferior courts as Congress may from time to time ordain and establish. The judges both of the Supreme Court and inferior courts shall hold the office during good behavior and shall at stated times receive for their services a compensation. Alrighty. The judicial power shall extend to all cases in law and equity arising under the Constitution. If you've read the Constitution, you know for a fact the U.S. Supreme Court is the ultimate arbiter of what is and is not constitutional. Be it a law, be it a ruling by the EPA, whatever. They're the final arbiter. That's their job. And John Marshall in 1803 and Marbury v. Madison, I urge you to go read the case. Very easy case to understand. Marshall shows his genius and establishes that yes, the court has the authority. Yes, the court's the final arbiter. Yes, we can do everything we need to do in this case, but Mr. Marbury hasn't gone to the proper lower court to seek relief. That's where he has to seek relief. We're not going to issue a writ of mandamus at the U.S. Supreme Court because he didn't go through the proper procedure. So from Marbury versus Madison forward, everyone in the United States who's read the Constitution, studied our history, and has any idea what the Declaration of Independence in the U.S. Constitution says, knows that the U.S. Supreme Court is in place for one critical duty, and that is to determine what is and is not constitutional. Not what's good or what's bad in policy, not what's good or what's bad for unwed mothers in Maryland. It is in place to determine, does the law conform to the U.S. Constitution or not? Obama comes out and says it would be unprecedented, exceptional, unbelievable if the court overturned Obamacare. Goes on to say strong majorities passed Obamacare. That's BS. 7 votes in the House, 10 in the Senate. 17 total out of 535 members. Does that sound like a strong majority to you? Even if it is a strong majority, if it violates this document, the U.S. Constitution, then it doesn't matter if every single person in the House and Senate voted for it. And if you look at the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, the so-called slavery amendments, every single person in the South where slavery existed was opposed to those amendments. Did it matter that they were opposed? No, because the Constitution says, and the Declaration says, what does the Declaration say? We hold these truths to be self-evident that all people are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable, they inhere in your bones, rights, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. Governments are constructed by people to make life more efficient. Anytime the government exceeds its power, because where does its power come from? The consent of the governed. For President Obama, a graduate of Harvard Law School, the editor of the Harvard Law Review, a quote-unquote constitutional law professor, for him to make the statements he made, it either means that Harvard Law School is a horrible place to go to school, or it means that he's the most dishonest, disingenuous, absolutely conniving president we've ever had. Now, what's the reaction to this? What's the pushback? The members of the U.S. Supreme Court can't do anything. So the 5th District Court of Appeals, 5th Circuit Court of Appeals, what did they do? They asked the Justice Department to respond in writing within 48 hours. They read them the Riot Act yesterday. On a separate case involving Obamacare, they said, does the president believe that the U.S. Supreme Court has the right of judicial review? And we want 3 pages, single-spaced, word processed in 48 hours on our desk. In other words, for those of you who can remember college, this is the cranky old law professor. In my case, my con law professor in college was a guy named Professor Ellis Waldron. He was a great, great teacher. And when he got angry at you, he said, and I can remember him looking at me and saying, Mr. Lovell, you will get the Constitution and you will find exactly where you are claiming that these rights exist, and you will come to class Monday with 3-foot by 5-foot pieces of fiberboard with black marks a lot written on there, chapter and verse from the U.S. Constitution or from case law that came out of the U.S. Supreme Court where these rights resolve. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals slapped the Justice Department 5 times harder than old Doc Waldron used to slap me in class. They said, in effect, you are here under a false premise. You are acting in bad faith. You will come back in 48 hours, 2 days, and you will say yes or no. The U.S. Supreme Court has the right of judicial review or not. And if the president is out telling the public, trying to appeal to the lowest common denominator, to the ignorant, to the uninformed, to the dupes in the public, trying to tell them that the U.S. Supreme Court's doing something it's never done before, we are going to have you. Department of Justice, you will respond in writing in 48 hours, 3 pages, single-spaced. Now, this is as close to being walked right out of the courtroom with the judge holding you by the ear and the switch in one hand and taking you to the woodshed and just walloping you into submission. I have never seen a federal court act this way. Let me just share with you, as the son of a U.S. federal court judge, these people are human, and they are madder than hell at the disregard, the disrespect, the absolute disrespect that has been shown by the president. President Obama has turned out to be not post-racial. He's the most racist president we've ever had. He's turned out to be not postmodern. He is antebellum in his clinging to division by race, by gender, by ethnicity, by socioeconomic class. This president has done more to damage relations in this country by race, by gender, by ethnicity, by class than any president we've ever had. And the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeal is going to take him and the Justice Department to the woodshed. We'll have more on this story next week. In the meantime, read Marbury versus Madison. God bless this great country. God bless you, and God bless the U.S. Supreme Court and our Constitution and the Declaration. See you next time.